Hello and welcome to another roundup of a week in the blockchain gaming world. Oh, hello. We're twinning
Snap.
today, John. Planet Mojo.
Snap.
And this is due to Season 7, just kicking off in Mojo Melee. Right. It's Friday, the 13th of September. I'm Jenny Jordan, as ever. With me is John Jordan. Hi, John.
As ever.
This week it's been quite a lot of news, so we're gonna, not too quickly, because we do want to go into some depth and give some context to what's been happening. We're gonna start off by talking about Icelandic developer CCP Games and their EVE Online blockchain game, which has been sort of codenamed Project Awakening for some time, actually since announcing that they had raised 40 million for this game last year. And now they have come out saying it's going to be called EVE Frontier. It's part of the EVE Online game, obviously, PC-based, and shared more about their sort of blockchain vision for this game. And they, it's like open source, and they want other developers to build on top of this. And in a way, it sounds similar to what other kind of Web3 developers have been sort of envisioning for their projects, but obviously not really seen fruition yet. This is different because this is already a proven successful game out there. It's a well-renowned developer, so this is a bit of a bigger deal. I'm sure you'll agree. So talk us through, John, what does this sort of mean and what can we expect coming from this?
Yes, yeah. So, as you say, it's been actually the first playtest for what was Project Awakening started in December last year, actually. So it's sort of quite a long time, almost coming up for a year. They've been doing, I think they've done 3 closed playtests, and really, I mean, they have been more for developers than players, because the whole point of what they're trying to do is they are building an open source sort of version of EVE Online. So EVE Online has been going for over 20 years. One of probably the most hardcore MMO, space fantasy, not fantasy, sort of sci-fi. People building massive spaceships and mining resources and building fleets and attacking each other and all that sort of stuff. And that game's sort of taken, as I say, a long time to get to where it is now. It's a super hardcore game, which means most people can't play it. So I think one of the big problems they have with that game is that they can get people to like make an account, but then people just can't. If I tried to play EVE Online, it just would, I wouldn't be able to do it. Sort of probably, it'd be too boring for me. And there's so many sort of powerful players in there, and they have this real problem getting sort of players into it. So effectively, I think they've not said this. This is me putting words into their mouths. Effectively, what they're doing here is making EVE Online 2. And so this is quite a big project for CCP Games. And what they've done is they have open sourced their entire development tools. So what they use to make EVE Online, that's being open sourced. Open source means you give all the source code out, so anyone can sort of build on top of it. And then they're sort of doing something similar with the universe. So in the sense, they're open sourcing the universe by building it on a blockchain, which means that everything in the universe will be connected to effectively a blockchain database, effectively, and that will allow people to do trading of all these assets. So it's they basically said what they're doing in the process of doing is sort of setting up the underlying physics of how this universe works. So they're, like in the real world, we have physics, which we can't change. And all games have physics. And in most cases, the developer can suddenly change gravity if it wants to. What they're doing in this game is they're trying to set the basic rules up. And when the game launches, whenever that is, they'll still have the ability to make some changes. But basically what they're trying to do is have a fixed set of how this game works and set up the rules. And then any developer or anyone with coding ability can come in and start building within those rules. So normally in a game, the game developer has total God power over the game, and the players play in there within, what the developer wants. In this game, what they want to do with EVE Frontiers, when it eventually is sort of gets to this stage, is everyone will have the same power as CCP Games to make games in there. So it's a totally open source, what they call a sandbox environment. It'll still be set graphically within this sort of world of space ships, and that's the sort of underlying sort of theme of it. And you'll have to, everything you do in the world uses fuel, and you have to then get resources and you trade them. But there'll be cryptocurrencies. So it's two currencies, one in-game one sort of external one. And so it's a very, very ambitious project. I mean, we shouldn't get we shouldn't underplay that. But it is, it is in a sense all, what they're doing is what every blockchain game hopes to do. The interesting thing is obviously they've done it before in a non-blockchain setting, and now they're trying to do it in a blockchain setting. So to that degree, they are the most experienced team in building this sort of stuff, and they are building the most ambitious sort of game using blockchain. And they, in fact, don't like to say this is a blockchain game, because obviously that has connotations that some people might not like. They say this is a game using blockchain. And they sort of say, the first EVE Online was a game using databases, and people thought that was weird. And, but then you sort of realise what sort of game you can make with that. So it is, it's very ambitious. I don't think it's anything that's going to happen soon. It's going to take them a long time to sort of get to a stage where, the likes of me and you could play. But it's big news.
So in other news this week, we've seen some games launches. Studio 369's MetalCore has launched open beta via Epic Games. That's been a game going through quite a lot of play tests up till now. It's been quite anticipated in the Web3 gaming space. You've played it quite a bit. I've tried it and got killed quite quickly. So killed, but trashed. So not very good at those games. I know neither are you, but
no,
but you persist a bit longer than I do. We've had Dookey Dash Unclogged from Gala Labs and Faraway Games. It was sort of live before, but they kicked off this. They marked sort of the big launch with a tournament, 1 million prize pool tournament, and it's a sequel to their Dookey Dash browser game that launched in 2023. It's now live via the App Stores, and PC version is planned eventually as well. And then we have seen Planetarium's Immortal Rising 2 also come to mobile. Also a sequel to the a Web 2 Immortal Rising from what's that?
Bad Beans.
Bad Beans, yes. Yes, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, for MetalCore, the interesting thing there is it's sort of finally into open beta, and everyone can play and they can start building network effects. So getting people into the game, and you keep playing the game rather than having to keep sort of stopping and starting. So, it's just, for all these things, it's sort of the starting point of sort of building to sort of, I guess, a formal launch. The games can be in open beta for a long time. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's as the shooters go, I think that one's fairly accessible. Actually, it's not like Shrapnel, which is very technically demanding on the player as much as anything. So I guess we'll keep an eye to see how many people they can get into that game. And they've said they've made sort of some new sort of PvE campaigns. I think there's a 10-player sort of raid mode, so you get 10 players together and all go in and do a raid together. So that sounds sort of accessible. Dookey Dash I think is really nice. Really plays really well on mobile. It's the same sort of endless runner with this $1 million sort of prize pool, but it's a very casual mobile game where you just sort of come in and you play a couple of goes, and obviously it's an endless runner, so you die. I mean, if you're like me, you die fairly quickly, but there's always sort of things to do, and they have quite a good arcade mode that sort of gives you little sort of missions almost to do, and there's quite a lot of in-app purchase stuff. So I guess that's interesting to see if they can sort of make money from it.
And I guess a further point there is the interoperability where you can get your NFTs in from. This is sort of part of Faraway's their creator tools and vision of integrating their shop and everything. So you can transfer your NFTs into the game from other games, and they are sort of fully playable in 3D mode, and then also in the creator suite, you can sort of make your own NFTs, which you can then either integrate into the games or you can sell on. So it's sort of it's sort of deeper in that sense. It's not just a casual mobile game, but
No.
it's also this. If you opt for it, there's
Yes.
also these Web3 features that are quite exciting on top of it.
Yeah, the platform integration. I mean, it's just it's a very polished game. It's just really, very, very high quality. And then the final one, Immortal Rising 2, which is sort of this endless sort of battle RPG, which I'm playing at the moment as we speak. It's sort of like I was showing you last night, and you were like, "Why would people play these games?" Because it's just like it's auto play.
Don't know to expose all my ignorance.
But I think that's what it shows. There's a sort of person who quite likes these games because every time you log in, you've got loads of rewards and you can level up your character and the gear, and there's lots of basically you don't sort of. It's not a game where your character dies. There are sort of missions that you can't complete, so you're always looking to sort of upgrade stuff, and there's different dungeons, and it's a very particular sort of genre, but one that has been very popular on mobile. So I don't think this is it's running on Immutable. To be honest, I've not got to the stage now where I can see any blockchain integration in it, to be honest. So I don't know if that's not in there at the moment. They're going to do that in an update. I'm not quite sure how they're going to do blockchain within it, but again, a team who know what they're doing. This is a sequel to a popular idle mobile game in the past. This graphically looks very good. It is a bit sort of, I would say, a bit sort of Korean in terms of Koreans quite busy interfaces and lots of numbers everywhere, and so maybe not sort of optimized for Western markets, but it's
just to defend myself there a little bit, I do obviously understand that this kind of game appeals to some people people that are very different to sort of busy mums with a very busy lifestyle anyway, easily overwhelmed by keeping loads of things and seeing that on the screen. Yes, talking of Immutable though, their mobile squad RPG Guild of Guardians reached a million downloads this week. So that was in the news. Moving on to the lawsuit, we're not going to dwell on Gala Games anymore. We've done that enough in the past, but it did emerge this week that the Dutch game developer Gamedia, I think you say it, Gamedia, that worked with Gala Games in the early days on their game Spider Tanks, Tank Brawler. They shared their story, basically their difficulties of working with and falling out with Gala earlier this year, and it then transpired that Gala Games sued them in return, bizarrely, but that lawsuit has now been dismissed. So do you want to dive into that a bit? Or?
No, I don't think we need to say any more, really. I mean, I think our views on Gala Games are sort of quite well known. It was clearly a ridiculous lawsuit. I mean, it was just chucked out because the court said we have no jurisdiction. So, I mean, it wasn't like the court said this is a stupid lawsuit. It just said we can't. This is not something for us to adjudicate. So it clearly should never have been taken to court in the first place. And it just Gala likes suing people. They like I think there's bullies who like using legal means to try and shut up people.
So there's obviously a lot to it, to sort of a backstory there, which Gamedia, in their statement they published earlier this year, there's just loads of that previous lawsuits and other studios that's been affected, and obviously the co-founders having not really sorted out their dirty laundry yet. So anyway, let's leave it at that. So Super Champs announced that they are launching their L3 Super Champs chain. They are using Arbitrum, let's get this right, Arbitrum rollup stack, but it will be deployed on base. Is that correct?
It's a bit confusing, I would say. So they've used Arbitrum's tech to build their L3, but in terms of the blockchain it's rolling back to base. Yeah.
Okay.
And they're currently running their apps on base themselves, so they're basically taking their stuff off base onto their own chain, which obviously sort of everyone's doing at the moment.
So the games in question is the Super Champs game, Racket Rampage, Bullet League, mobile games. So they are all the former sort of Joyride games, or still Joyride Games ecosystem, but they're now just sort of branding themselves as Super Champs. I'm a bit confused about that. Is that
slightly more complex, I suppose. Like, so they're launching the Champs coin. That's being launched by the Super Champs Foundation. So that's a standard way, particularly for a US company. You can't really issue tokens, or the SEC might come after you. So generally, you set up a foundation somewhere outside of the US that will issue the coins and sort of run the project. So Joyride Games is sort of a contractor for Super Champs Foundation. Super Champs Foundation is run by someone who used to work for Joyride, so it's obviously it's a legal separation. Quite how technically much of a separation there is, not quite sure. But it's I guess they're like a lot. People like to launch their own blockchains because they can create their own tokens. Obviously, sort of the point that only works in the short term. In the long term, you need other developers to be developing on your chain. And the problem is there's so many L3 chains out there at the moment, all looking for developers. It's sort of, how do you choose between them? Clearly, a whole bunch of these L3 chains will just be failures, like all blockchains are. So it's a bit of a the risk reward is you can create a token and maybe make some money off it. The risk is you've got to get loads of other developers to use your chain. It's not quite clear to me how a lot of these people are going to do it, but.
Okay. And pioneering blockchain game Axie Infinity actually celebrated 2 years, but I know it's Axie Origins celebrated 2 years this week, 14th of September. It was obviously initially launched as Axie Infinity, and then 2 years ago they rebooted it and launched it with a new rewards system, basically, and on what was I going to say?
I don't know.
Remember. So celebrating 2 years, they're rolling out like a rewards program to their sort of loyal players, and they've also launched season 10, including a $100,000, I think, dollar rewards.
Well, it is one of. So it's sort of one of these things where actually, they would point out. In fact, they did point out. We're up to 80,000 daily active players, sort of on Axie Origins. But really, it started the year with about 15,000, and then they started giving away basically tokens for you just logging in. It's not quite that, but it's sort of that, really.
The bounty boards you're talking about, or
well, there's the seasonal rewards, but there's also just login rewards as well. So there's a whole bunch of rewards they're doing. So sort of what they're doing is they're just giving away a XS token, quite a lot, hundreds of thousands every sort of couple of months to get players in. I think if they took that away, then their audience would drop off fairly quickly. And obviously, giving away tokens means people are probably just selling those tokens. So most crypto's down at the moment. A XS token isn't actually particularly down more than anything else, but they're giving away loads of tokens, so obviously they sort of have downward pressure on their tokens. So I think it's fair enough. My views sort of solidified that Axie is will always be sort of a part of blockchain gaming history. I still own some Axie NFTs, but I just as a game that specific sort of implementation of the game, I find it very hard to think is going to be sort of anywhere close to one of the most popular games. Obviously, they have loads of NFTs out there, so they can make loads of different games on it. They've had Axie Homeland is a sort of interesting sort of resource management game. You could imagine a really cool, real-time strategy game using Axies as things like that. Once you've got the NFTs out there, then you can do other things with them. I think this sort of card-based game is sort of I wouldn't get too excited about it myself, but maybe I'm overly grumpy.
No, but I think you're really pointing out there as well the kind of the reward systems often that keeps gamers coming back to these games. It's not specifically talking about Axie Infinity, but these games aren't yet where they retain these players without offering generous rewards. So when they the player bases have dropped by 70% in previous examples we've seen, in Blocklords and Pixels and whatnot. Currently, it's Catison that's risen to fame. People are kind of desperate to this tap game on Ton where they will get like Catison tokens. I can't remember what they're called. Catty tokens. So that's now boosted its player base to over 1 million daily active users, I think.
It's 500,000 wallets, but
500,000 wallets.
But
so not nothing, but still, if we're reporting on other games with that sort of player base, then Catison is certainly up there in the top now. But interesting to see, obviously, when the airdrop's done, token probably drops, and will players remain, loyal Catison players, or will they jump on the next sort of big tap craze game?
That's exactly the problem with incentive models, as we've sort of discussed many times. They're great. They're great marketing to get players in, but we've seen very few examples of games that have sort of kept 50% of that audience. As soon as you change the reward structure, there's just there are people who are prepared to play games and enjoy these sort of games, but that's tens of thousands, whereas there's hundreds of thousands of people who come along for your rewards. So
when do you think developers will learn this then? Will learn this sort of lesson and I think their rewards systems?
I think they know. They know, but it's free marketing. So otherwise, you're spending a lot of money setting up complex marketing campaigns, which is complex from a how you do it point of view and expensive. So one of the nice things of crypto is you do have this virality. So the problem I don't have problems with people using crypto rewards to get players in. I sort of have problems with people when they have all these players coming in, putting out press releases saying, "Look at all our millions of players," and you go, "Yeah, but that was because it's a little bit like with Sky Mavis and Axie. I like them as sort of people, but sometimes I do feel they press release or they highlight things where you just say, yeah, but we all know in next week that's not going to be the case. So you're they're sort of promoting the industry needs to promote sustainability, even if they're using sort of virality to build audience, and that's sort of my beef with a lot of these sort of projects. What do I know?
Yeah, well, you know.
I'm not a game developer. If I was a game developer, I'd be like, look at. Look at all my YouTube, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, anyway, just stop there.
That's why you're an advisor rather than a developer, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, so Nytro Labs, also known as, you've added here, Year-Long Infinite Interactive Entertainment Company Limited. No, they've announced has raised 8 million for their 4 times what is it called?
Castile.
Castile, yes, or Castile. I don't know how you say it. Which has now entered open beta testing on Aptos. Its total amount raised so far is now 25 million, so that's not insignificant in this day and age. Yep. Have you played it?
No, I haven't actually. I've downloaded the APK, so it's available on an open beta, but you have to sign up through Test Flight for Apple or download the APK for Android, which is just a bit of a hassle. So Chinese company based out of Hong Kong. They say they are funded by Tencent and ByteDance, so 2 of the biggest Chinese IT companies, both of them into games. ByteDance are the company behind TikTok. So they seem to be sort of experienced people, although the team is not doxed really, so we're not quite sure. Obviously, Tencent have probably invested in loads of companies, and so we don't really know. The game, from what I've seen, videos and stuff, is very high end, as you'd expect from sort of these Chinese developers who are experienced in mobile and have probably costs are much cheaper there. So very sort of high end sort of graphics on the characters and stuff. Looks like a very 4X grindy sort of game, so appeals to some people. Doesn't appeal to other people. Say running on Aptos, we don't quite know about blockchain integration, how that's going to work out. Aptos is not a blockchain, really has much gaming on it, so an interesting choice there. Launching a token called Cast, so I imagine this funding round is mainly is probably a sort of pre-sale on that token. So yeah, a little bit more sort of questions and answers, but again, I guess it goes to show a lot of the activity now is mobile. So we assume that game will go live through app stores when it goes live properly. So there's loads of blockchain games everywhere on every platform, but it seems mobile is currently where we see a lot of activity.
Good. In other news, Solana-based NFT collection Claynosaurz has announced it's partnering with Gameloft to work on a game with the integration, obviously, of these Claynosaurz characters It's not really been stated, what the blockchain in this game will be, if any, apart from these characters. Are they going to be NFT integration, or do you know sort of anything?
No, it's sort of so Claynosaurz, whatever they're called. As I say, there were 10,000 on Solana, and they're still like $2,500. And they did like an airdrop for people who had the Solana phone. So I can't remember how many of those are, a few thousand of those. But they're a bit like sort of Doodles in the sense that they launched as NFTs, but they're very much trying to build in Web 2 as much as Web 3. So they obviously they're sort of clay-like dinosaurs. It's supposed to be sort of funny, humorous things. They've done a few animations on YouTube, and they're trying to build up these sort of the IP side, which is often animations and plushies. And I don't know how successful they're going to be on that, but the team's quite experienced in that as much as anyone is. And they are cute. I mean, the animations that I saw were good. Gameloft is slightly weird to choose as a developer. They've not done any blockchain stuff before. They're a pretty solid mobile developer, but they're not very innovative normally. French developer, but with a lot of development sort of in developing countries, India and places like that. So they've definitely said it's not going to be like a full-on hardcore blockchain game. Obviously, the point is they want to get people to play the. I think they would do a Web 2 game, even if they weren't a blockchain company, because the games are sort of you get people into that, but because they are Web 3, they'll probably have some sort of Web 3 integration. Something for the NFT holders to do. I don't think they're going to be launching sort of tokens or anything off the back of it. I think it's just a light way of sort of getting the brand out there a bit more, and maybe over time, obviously you can do different things if it's successful. But I think it'll be a fairly standard sort of free-to-play mobile game in the initial experience.
Finally, I'm going to leave the last note here to you, because I'm not really sure what to say about grapes. I know they were in the news. I'll leave it to you.
Grapes, yeah. So grapes. So I think there's going to be more coming out about this. So we won't go into too much detail on it. But grapes, originally an NFT project that timed it beautifully last year. So they launched these grape NFTs. And they did really well just when the market was picking up. And one of the reasons you might have bought these grape NFTs was you were going to get an allocation of the grape coin, and they launched that in December last year. Again, beautiful timing, just as all the game token stuff was kicking off. So it all did, from a sort of velocity point of view, if you got into that project early, you did really well out of it. Obviously, the question mark was always, what's the point of these assets? And the team was experienced in making mobile games, and they did like a Roblox game with the grape characters. They did a whole bunch of sort of casual games with these sort of grape characters, but it was a little bit lightweight. I was sort of felt, and so what happened is even before market sentiment sort of declined, generally the sentiment around grapes declined quite quickly. Certainly on the coin, the token. And so they sort of, at that point, you're sort of struggling because just the token price is going down all the time. No one wants to buy any of your stuff. So they've launched a launch pad. So you can, if you have grape tokens, you can get these other tokens. But the tokens you're buying through their launch pad are not really very good. A lot of Telegram stuff. So they were. I think people are saying, "Oh, this was a rug," or "These were sort of bad people." They weren't bad people. I mean, I knew one of them. The good news is that someone's bought the NFT side of it out. So I think we don't know who it is. It is an existing investor in the company, maybe Animoca. I'm not quite sure, but we will wait and see. But at least the project is sort of ongoing with someone doing something with it. So I guess hopefully we'll get some more news later about sort of what's going on with grapes, because it was Well, it was what it was, I suppose.
All right, okay. Well, that was the last note of the day anyway. So thank you very much for listening, and see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.